This is my story. It may be a little messy and unorganized, but I wanted to share it. I'm still going through it, but things seem to be going well, and I have learned a lot through the experience so far. I am 25 years old. My wife and I got married almost 4 years ago and had been friends for about 2 years before getting married. About 3 months into our marriage, we got pregnant, which wasn't part of the plan. We are both Christians, which I think has been an important factor in our recovery. D-Day was October 29th. I found out because a brother-in-law had heard through the grapevine that my wife was seen alone with a guy at an ice skating rink. When he told me this, I asked my wife about it later that night, expecting that there was some sort of misunderstanding or some explanation. What followed was like getting punched in the stomach. She explained that the ice skating was supposed to be a group thing, but when she got there it was just the guy, etc. The troubling part was that I could tell she wasn't telling me everything. I began asking her more questions like, should I be concerned about other guys? When her response was silence and no eye contact, I felt myself beginning to get sick. After a few moments, I popped the big question, are you sleeping with someone else? I felt stupid for even asking. Again, silence. I began grieving in an intense way that was more like shrieking than crying. After several minutes, I began asking her more questions. I really wanted to know how long / how many times / with whom. At first, she wouldn't answer any of my questions. She sat there in almost complete, cold silence. Then she began telling me that she didn't love me. In fact, she never did, and further that I never loved her. Perhaps the worst part, she told me she loved the other man. I honestly can't remember all the details of that night, but that was the general tone. I said several expletives, but never called her any names. I told her I needed space and left. As soon as I went outside, I began to worry she would hurt herself and didn't feel good about leaving her like that. I decided to go back inside and tell her how I felt. When I went back inside, I told her that I was really hurt, but that I still loved her and wanted to make it work. I tried to give her a hug, which sent her into a crying fit. She pushed me away, telling me, stop loving me. We sat mostly silent for a few moments, and I told her again that I wanted to work it out, but I needed some space for the night. With that, I left. I stayed with my parents that night and hardly slept at all. My parents also watched my son for the next 2 weeks while we started working on things. The next morning, I went back home early to find that my wife wasn't home. I wasn't entirely surprised. She needed to be comforted, so she stayed with the only person that would comfort her, the other man. I called her. She didn't answer, but called me back very quickly. I told her I wanted to talk and asked if she would come home, which she did. As I sat there waiting for her, I did a few household projects I had been meaning to do. I couldn't take the stillness of doing nothing. I thought about what I would say when she got back. I had it planned. I heard her car pull into the driveway and went outside to greet her. When I saw her, an overwhelming compassion for her came over me. Everything I had planned on saying, everything I had been feeling melted away, and all I could do was embrace her. I felt like the father in the parable of the prodigal son, with some obvious differences. We went out for coffee and started discussing what had happened. Her attitude was a lot different than it had been the previous night. She was a lot more open about everything. Now, it's been a little over 5 weeks since I found out at the time of writing this. I don't remember every detail of what happened, and it seems like it's been a lot longer. Every day has felt like a week. I will try to condense everything into the most important parts. The first week was the hardest on me. I literally lost nearly 10 pounds and over an inch in my waistline in that first week. I spent every possible moment with her when I wasn't at work and spent every waking moment thinking about everything and planning how I should feel and what I should do. We started by discussing what had happened and how she felt. She basically felt like she never loved me, married me out of infatuation, and was unhappy because of our marriage. She felt like I didn't care about her, and she felt like she wasn't attracted to me. She wanted adventure and to do something great with her life. Notice I say felt, because these feelings would soon start changing, and she would realize that her feelings were clouded. The affair itself lasted for a couple months. She had dated the other man briefly before dating me, and they had remained in occasional contact throughout our marriage. They were only together twice, but had been spending lots of time together in their mutually shared activities. From what I understand, they went on a couple of dates during that time span. My wife didn't really work a job, though she did have several sources of side work. Most weeknights, she would either be taking/teaching dance classes, gymnastics, or doing an activity like rock climbing. I work full-time, take some side jobs, and go to school full-time, I was taking 18 hours. This was obviously not an ideal scenario. The other man would see her regularly at some of these activities, which I did not know at the time, and eventually during the day while I was at work. In the first 2 weeks of our recovery, we started seeing a marriage counselor, and she voluntarily saw an individual counselor. We didn't tell any of her family, and only one couple of our close friends. Also, her sister was getting married the week after I found out, so we were trying to keep it quiet for her family's sake. We spent lots of time together over this time, and she made vague commitments to try to make our marriage work and not to contact the other man. She did contact the other man and even saw him in person once or twice, and somewhat tried to hide this from me. Things came to a head one day at lunch when she told me she needed separation. This really upset me because we had agreed to stay together and work it out. I told her if she needed space I would give it to her, but we were going to talk to her parents first, which we did, right then. Talking to her parents helped. She decided that she was going to stay in the marriage, though she didn't really want to or want me. The next day, when she got home from work, the other man was waiting at my house for her. I found out because I saw she was sitting at a park close to my house, through GPS tracking, for a long time. I called her, and she didn't answer. When she called back, I played it cool, and she didn't say anything. I asked her directly, "So you were at the park by yourself?" She broke down, started crying saying she didn't know what to do, etc. I told her I was very angry, and when I got home, I was the most angry with her that I was in the whole process. I told her I couldn't believe she lied to me again, a day after making the decision to stay with me. I felt stupid for trusting her and felt like I should kick her out. But I put the ball in her court. I told her to make a decision, me forever or not. She cried and told me she wanted another chance. I decided to give her another chance, though I knew it was illogical and foolish, but that's love, right? She asked me if I wanted her to call the other man and break up with him right then, and I told her to do so if she felt it. She called and prefaced the conversation by saying, "My name is here," which of course made the rest of what she said useless. I may have also lost my temper and grabbed the phone and threatened the other man on the condition of him coming to my house again. The next day, she called me while I was at work to ask if she could call the other man and explain what was going on. I obliged, because in reality, I didn't have a choice. It is much better to come off confident than to try to control, especially because controlling doesn't actually work. I don't know exactly what was said, but it was a long conversation, 80 minutes. According to my wife, she basically told the other man how she felt, which I'm sure included that she still loved him, and that she had made a decision to work on our marriage. Later that day, I got a text message from the other man telling me we needed to meet. I obliged, because, again, I didn't really have a choice. This guy knows where I live, so if he wanted to hurt me, he could do so. He also told me that he wanted my wife to be there. I let her decide if she wanted to come or not. She decided to come. We met outside of Starbucks. I got there first, picked a table outside, and arranged the seating so that my wife would have to sit next to me and the other man would have to sit on the other side of the table. I also had my friend come and watch the conversation from his car because I wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen. I went straight from work, so my wife had to meet us there. The other man showed up, and a little later my wife showed up. The other man told me he didn't want to fight me, and that trying anything would be stupid. He waited to really get into the discussion until my wife showed up. Once she did, he started with a good 5+ min prepared, written speech on our marriage and relationship. When he was done, I said, "You've just read us a very carefully crafted lie. Like any good lie, there is some truth in what you said, but it is still a lie." We then proceeded to talk about some of the things he had brought up. My attitude throughout the discussion was mostly to force my wife to make the decisions. I told her several times that I wasn't holding her to our marriage and that she could leave if she wanted. I could talk a lot about this meeting because it was really upsetting, but the important part is that my wife left with me. After that, things settled down a bit. If I remember correctly, for the next week, she didn't see or talk to the other man. They were still friends on Facebook and Instagram, but from what I could tell from spying and directly asking, she didn't directly contact him at all. She even ignored several text messages from him. At the end of that week, we had a trip to Miami planned for a small gig she had. We made it into a small vacation and genuinely had a good time together. At one point during our drive to Miami, she mentioned separation again. She said she felt like she needed separation to figure out what she wanted, find herself, etc. I told her I didn't want her to feel that way